Hey everyone, Chris Lopez here, and today is a very special house hacking mastermind. So this is, I think, January 14th or 15th, right in the middle of January, maybe January 11th, I don't know, right around the middle of January, right? 14th? All right. It's kind of blurred so far to me. So we're going to do the house hacking mastermind, but I'm happy to say this is the first time we're recording a podcast, now a video podcast in our new studio. So when you listen to the podcast, if you want to check out in the show notes, I imagine they'll be in there when you put them up there. A video to this, you'll see the new studio. So I got my normal co-host today, Ben Einspar. How are you doing, Ben?
Chris, I'm doing well. How are you doing?
Doing really good, man. And Jeff White, how are you, sir?
Awesome, as always.
All right, glad to hear it. And we have one guest today, Andrew Lloyd. Andrew, how are you?
Good, Chris. Thanks for having me on.
Yeah, and so Andrew bought his first house hack about 2 or 3 months ago, right?
Yeah, about a month and a half ago.
Okay. Yeah.
In November, yeah.
So we're just going to do our normal thing, ask questions. And Ben, why don't you take it away?
Awesome. So one thing I started doing that I really enjoy doing is kind of diving into your story. And before we kind of get into where you're currently living, the details and the ins and out of your current house hack, like, how'd you find out about real estate investing? And more importantly, how did you find out about house hacking and that it was a right fit for you?
Yeah. So I had, since college, I'd always kind of been interested in entrepreneurial ventures and did a lot of things in college and nothing really stuck. And then moved on to the corporate world for a bit. And at the same time, I had been living with 4 or 5 other roommates, from college and then after. And I was like, you know what? Maybe I should just be the one owning the house and have these guys pay me. So I kind of looked into it and then found Bigger Pockets community, and that led me to Chris and Jeff and all these guys, and just basically soaked up all that knowledge, and basically that led me to where I'm at now. Yeah.
So what sparked the interest to look at real estate investing for you? Like, something must have sparked in you. Was it a book you ordered, or simply like, hey, I got 4 roommates, I should own the house? Like, what was the spark that got it going?
Yeah, so it was having 4 roommates and calculating, okay, we're paying $30,000 a year on a rental, which could be coming to my pocket. So that was kind of the switch that flipped.
Okay.
And then I didn't really know what I was doing at first, and then just finding all these, I didn't even know these communities existed, like Bigger Pockets and what you guys have going on. But in the age of information, this stuff's all on the internet, so it can be learned, and one thing led to another, and I just committed and made it happen.
Yeah. It's funny how you mentioned your mindset in college. When I remember when I was in college, my dad mentioned to me, he's like, you should save up and buy a house and just rent it to your college roommates. And when he said it, I was probably morning, I was tired from being up all night, and I was like, yeah, whatever, Dad. But like, I just didn't even think of it then. I didn't even think about what I wanted to do in the future and future planning. I was still probably my freshman year in college, but it never struck me until you brought up in college, when you're living with your roommates, and you're used to living with roommates, you're used to sharing a property, because I'm sure it's difficult going and then having your own space and then sizing back down and having to go back to sharing a place with roommates, right?
Yeah, and it was also something that I kind of thought that only like rich investors could do. I thought, especially in college, you don't have much money, but I figured you have to have like tons and tons of money. You have to put 20% down to buy a house.
Yeah.
But
I don't know where that myth came from.
Yeah.
Infomercials. Were you like me when you first found out about real estate investing? Is all I wanted is it was a status. I was like, I just want as many rentals as matter. Like if they asked me, I was like, oh, I want 15 rentals. I never talked about income or cash flow. I was just mainly focused on doors, and like my priorities are completely flip-flop right now, where it's more about peace of mind and what fits best for my personal situation than actually, oh yeah, I own about 15 rentals,
I think it's also just very different, in this market in Denver.
Absolutely.
If you're in somewhere where it's not crazy, you could probably own, you might want to own a ton of doors, but here, you can have great success just owning a few.
So what's your basic plan? Obviously, you got house hack number 1.
Yep.
This is a first step of mini.
Yep.
What's the playing board look like?
So long term is kind of unclear, to be honest. I know I want to get into my second house hack as quickly as possible, but I'm really just trying to build as much passive income as I can. And my short-term goals are filling out the rest of my house, and getting onto my second house hack as soon as I can. Yeah.
So just house hack while you're able to in a point in life. Yep.
As many as I can while I can. Exactly.
Yeah,
Good point.
That's one of my go-to responses when people ask me, because actually I was on a podcast being interviewed by someone a couple months ago, and they were like, if you go back and tell your 18 yourself, what would you tell yourself to do? And after a few times of answering, I realized I would just go back and house hack every single year from 18 to 28, and then just if you did that, imagine if you did that, the power of that, just the numbers.
Especially at 18 years old.
Yeah.
And then, so pretty much your college would if you had student loans, that'd pretty much cover all your college, pay off your student loans, and then all that equity and cash flow over that much time. And then you're 20 years old and you have at least 10 properties.
Yeah.
Without even, all you're doing is moving every year. And it's not a big change of lifestyle because you're used to living with roommates in college.
And if they're doing the room by room model like you, I would be done by the time I was 25, know?
And are you planning on self-managing these for the
Yeah,
interim time?
I think so.
Okay.
So far it hasn't been too bad self-managing it. I actually was able to get everyone. I've signed 3 people so far, and I actually was able to do that without doing any showings, because I was back home in Michigan, and I just had people pinging me, and I gave them a virtual tour, and before I even got back here, I was able to get 3 people. So
beautiful.
So were these
really
your
hasn't been so
current
bad.
roommates where you moved to?
No.
Oh, so these are all new? I
Yes.
thought they didn't make the move with you?
No. One of them actually bought a condo in Highlands Ranch, and then the other one wanted his own personal space.
Oh.
But yeah, these are all new
Okay.
guys.
I could tell you it's usually better when you don't know them.
Yeah.
Because I don't know what you guys' experience living with friends are, but usually you see them true selves, and then either you like them more or just then you don't ever want to talk to them again.
I hate admitting it, but it's the truth that I'm too nice. I'm just too nice. I'm not good at being that. So that's why I either have someone else break the bad news, or I just make sure I don't know them, and it's just more formal and processed as a business.
So for noise issues at your current place, Allison goes up and talks to them.
Allison if it depends on if it's male or female. If it's female, she'll go up and talk to him. If it's male, I'll go up and talk to him.
Is that the rule?
It is now. I just thought of it now. No, that's what we've been doing.
Yeah.
One thing let me go back. You mentioned that you said your long-term goal is unclear. That's not a bad thing at all, because as you go in, you develop what fits you right. And when I first started about house hacking, I wanted to do one every year for a certain amount of time, and your priorities change. Jeff, rewind a little bit and think about your very first house hack.
Yes.
What was your mindset for future? What did you want to do? Did you know what it was, or?
Oh yeah, no, I planned it out. I wanted to do because at that time in 2017, they still had the conventional multifamily loan called one of those.
Home ready or
Home ready, yeah. They had where
There's 3 variations
you
of
could
those.
do a 5% down conventional for multifamily, not just FHA. So I was like, okay, I'll just do straight multi. I'll just get a 2 to 4 unit every year for 7 years. That was my plan originally. And then they changed that rule where they don't have that conventional loan anymore. So obviously you had to adapt. And that's what you might have to do is prices get more expensive. Rent by room's a great model right now, just because Denver's a popular place and people don't want to pay how much it is for one bedroom, so they'd rather pay, save money and pay $700 for a room. So it's a great model for the next, I would say, 3 to 7 years. Long term, you might actually have to switch them out for your own sanity too. To switch them out to just long term rentals. And but yeah, that's to answer your question, Ben. That was my initial plan, and then I pretty much, after my first, and also my first one was the worst, my most challenging, not the worst one.
The fourplex was?
The fourplex, yeah. Because I had...
It was I thought multifamilies were perfect for... I thought you could only house hack with multifamilies.
Multifamilies, I would say, at least in the Denver market, from my experience, talking to Chris, observing other people, is 90% of them are junker properties that the owners never lived in them. So just imagine the worst type of quality, and you pretty much have to go and just fixing up things. That's your mindset. Like, okay, it's gonna... I had not pliers pliers to turn on the bathroom faucet because it was missing the little handle, and then I had to evict. It's just, and the mold was growing. I mean, it was just a whole, and that was just the start of the issue. Yeah, mold in Colorado, which is
is a thing.
Not but
it's rare, but it's a thing.
Yeah.
But when you have all the windows closed,
takes talent,
and you don't have a fan in the bathroom, and then they have running the shower all the time, and it just develops over time. So basically what I'm saying is multifamily, my initial expectation was it's the best investment, especially from learning from Bigger Pockets. They say multifamily like this and that is the best thing ever. And in Denver, the reality is much different. It's, I would argue, the other way around, single family, because a lot of owners live there, it's going to have higher quality. So automatically, you're not going to have to deal with a bunch of upfront deferred maintenance, and you can just move in and fix up a couple things and still rent it out. Versus multifamily, we actually didn't move in for the first 3 months because it was there's cockroaches too. There's mold issues. The bathroom tile was literally falling apart. We had to replace all that. So it was. And this is just on our first couple weeks there.
Wait, did you buy that place with a normal FHA loan?
Yeah.
How'd that pass an FHA appraisal?
Yeah, that's my question to that appraiser, because it had health and safety.
Do you have his contact details?
Yeah. Do you need this guy? Yeah.
Because I know we've talked about this. I mean, for ever since 3 years ago.
Yeah.
Because we helped you buy the next place. I remember you telling me about it. I just clicked for now how bad condition it was.
Yes.
That should not have gone FHA.
No, because it had it. You could see the mildew growing on where the caulking is in the tub. There was mildew growing. There was cockroaches, and somehow it still passed FHA. And if you I don't know how they
explain that for our listeners out there. What's an FHA appraisal compared to other stuff?
So FHA appraisal is, just think of it, they're more, because they're protecting the buyer, so they're more stringent on how they look at it versus just a conventional appraisal. Just says, okay, the house is fine, and here's the comps, and this is what it pays for. But FHA, because it's a government sponsored loan, they want to make sure it's better quality for protecting the buyer. So they look for the true health and safety issues of mold, or they're supposed to. Mold, mildew, cockroaches, just structural issues, foundation issues, windows that don't close, and stuff like that. That's what they should be looking for. But some FHA, the one I had, I guess, ignored that stuff and just gave it value.
I actually had an FHA, my loan was an FHA loan, and the inspection came back with, there was this kind of outside the back door is a little overhang with some wood going around the side, kind of like a attached gazebo maybe. And it was chipping paint. Yep. So that came back. They were like, you need to fix this. So they just painted it over, and then the seller painted it over, and it was fine after that.
Oh yeah, peeling paint.
And that's very normal. You'll have chipping paint on the one of the foot treads going up the front deck, and they ding you for that. But it amazes me that you got to.
I'll send you the appraisal. Find this guy.
Exactly.
But I mean, it should be the reality. You're right. It should. They have a higher standard for FHA or NVA too, I believe. But sometimes I guess I got lucky, or who knows what.
Appraisals, it's half science, half art. It's very subjective. So talking about this, you were talking about the finding multifamilies versus single families. So the last couple weeks I've been writing the the Denver annual update for the 2021 book. So I've been going back reviewing stats, looking at trends, just kind of, okay, here's our data for the year. And two things, especially for house hackers nomads, multifamilies are actually looking more attractive, relatively speaking, than like we've been saying the last couple of years. I think it's a couple reasons. One is, as everyone knows, the inventory is super low, especially in detached single-family homes. I mean, there's just nothing out there. So by default, that kind of makes multis a little bit more attractive. But also, as single families have appreciated in price, I don't think multis have. They relatively don't feel like they've gone up as much. I haven't compared the data yet, but they seem to be becoming a little bit more favorable. So they're definitely not as hard as we would say years ago. The other thing, and Ben, you know about this, is buying new build townhomes. I don't think in 2019, I don't think we bought any new build townhomes. In 2020, we bought 6 to 8 of them. I say we, with clients, most of them being nomaders or house hackers, because and they're between like 500 to 650. You can buy a single family home now for $450 and up. So hey, buy a 1960s, 4-bedroom, or go buy a new build in 5 or 5.25 range. Not that much more expensive. It's brand new, better layouts, and especially for room by room, because you usually have like a bedroom on the floor with its own ensuite. Then middle is kitchen, living room. The upstairs is like basically 2 master bedrooms. So it's basically three rooms with 3 private baths plus a half bath on the main floor. And some of them actually, we found 2 home builder complexes where they actually built in like a mother-in-law suite or Airbnb in the basement.
Wow.
Which you know about, Ben.
Yeah.
I do know all about.
Do you want to talk about that?
Yeah. So just for the listeners and everyone listening, we are in the process of going from house hack number 1 to house hack number 2, and it's unique because we let me think. The condos typically aren't attractive, but it just depends on what fits your personal goals. Allison and I talked to Allison the other day, and we thankfully just yesterday, I'd say the greatest thing is we just got a signed lease for 2 years. And I was just telling you earlier, Jeff, that there's nothing better than taking your listing off Zillow, off Facebook Marketplace, whatever platform you're using. But it's just such a relief. But where was I going with this? It fits our goals. And I was asking her, well, if you had to rate this on a scale of 1 to 10, what would you rate it? And she's like, not easy. It was challenging. And I would do it.
Did she give a number?
No, she just said not easy. Not easy. But
so that's probably below 5.
So translation.
Huh?
And just to
7.
Well, so and it's just the timing that we're going through it right now is we're gonna have a new baby girl in June. Congrats.
Congrats.
Thank you.
Have you got a name?
We do not.
Oh, they're so far out.
That is the least of our worries. There's a lot of moving parts. For my W-2 career it was year end, and I had a lot of goals I had to present to my supervisors, to my boss, and so there's a lot of moving parts. But we found it. Condos may not be the best for house hackers, but it fits our personal goal. Like you said, the bottom is it's a 3-bedroom, 4-bath. There's a mother-in-law suite on the first floor that has its own washer and dryer, its own bathroom, its own separate entrance. So we're going to Airbnb that, and then we're going to live in the top unit. And the numbers, if you look at the numbers, it's not a slam dunk, and it's not a home run, but it's okay because it's a base hit. And like I've said earlier, is base hit wins the game, not home runs, not slam dunks.
Well, especially too. I mean, you're in what, June or July, right? Is that when your daughters due?
Yes.
Yeah.
June 5th.
Okay, so in June, I mean, you're married with a newborn. Newborn coming along the way. Like, there's a balance of you generally personally start outlaying more than some future rental needs as well, and you find that balance.
Exactly.
And that's exactly where all these new build townhomes fit into. It's just like they fit that they fit that balance on there.
Less maintenance. It's
Yeah.
built in 2020. Less maintenance, and it'll be a great rental when we move out and to find another place.
And I'm sure Allison is much more thrilled about going into a new build versus a
yes.
1970s 3-bedroom house.
Mm-hmm.
But I'm
I
sure
mean, I would
for
be
you-
too. So, like, at least they like.
But
That's
for
a nice
you,
way to
I
put
think
it.
you are too, right?
Yes, I'm more of a do-it-yourselfer. I do not like paying someone else to do something I can do or I can learn to do. And so I like doing it on my own, but I tend to overextend myself. I create new swear words while I'm trying to learn plumbing and so on and so forth, but it fits like same with like the multifamily, single family, whatever it is, there's no right answer.
Yeah.
And it fits our goal, and the numbers aren't a slam dunk when we're living there, but when we move out, it's going to be a great rental. It's right by a hospital, and so we are very, very excited, and more excited that last night we were able to sign the 2-year lease, and this is good.
Well, congrats.
Thank you.
Congrats. That's sweet.
So, Andrew, you've got 2 great house hackers here, Jeff and Ben, who've got lots of experience, success, and they've made their fair share of mistakes, like everyone. What are your questions? Like, pick their brains. Like, what, you're 6 weeks, 8 weeks into your place, got some new tenants in there. Like, What are your questions? What are your problems? What are your friction points? Like, what's going on with getting House Hack 1 stabilized?
Yeah. So, all right. So just to set where it's at right now. I spent the first month and a half. I actually added 3 rooms. I had a contractor come in and put 2 walls in and closets to add 2 rooms, and then I actually did some drywall work. There was a room that was attached to a bathroom, which is shared with another room. So I had to close off the door because it was like what's it called, like a Jack and Jill.
Yep.
I had to close off one door, and then I painted the kitchen cabinets and did some other things.
Did you use primer?
So yes, I did. But just last week, I got 2 people moved in, another person signed, and I have had a couple other leads. So,
So how many bedrooms is your house now? Sounds like
it's
you put
now
up,
6.
Okay, I was
Yeah.
gonna say
That is-
somehow you put up like a couple extra bedrooms in there.
It's like 18
There
bedrooms.
was this massive room in the basement that was like, I want to say like 40 by 13.
Oh wow.
Yeah, I might be overestimating that slightly, but it was really long, and it's the width of the house, really.
Okay. And it was finished. It was just,
Yep,
just
it was finished.
Just a big finished basement.
Yep.
Okay.
So, and that was like half the basement, so it was like a bowling alley this way, and then the other side was like the furnace room and the other room in the bathroom. So yeah, I'm trying to do 6 beds, 3 bathrooms.
And we're not all 6.
Yes. So,
That put a smile on Jeff's face
have you been talking to him
Jeff
recently?
actually, I was not sure about the last one. Jeff actually talked me into it. I talked with him. I was like, I'm not sure about this last bedroom.
Well,
There's always, as long as you price it right.
Yeah.
Even the dungiest, like there's someone out there.
Yeah.
I mean, maybe it won't be the nicest bedroom or the biggest, but as long as there's a closet, egress window if it's in the basement, and a door, as long you'll find somebody.
Mm-hmm.
There's people out there that will rent pretty much anything for the right price.
Yeah.
Actually,
have you found the tipping point of where that
the
right
range?
price is, or like?
Well, it's called $50 increments, right?
Yeah.
Drop it $50.
It's usually what he's had to learn. His training wheels had to come off right in the middle of Thanksgiving, Christmas, which is the hardest time to rent for just in general for anyone, let alone rent by the room. So for going forward, you're going to have a lot easier time once you fill all those rooms, and then you stagger the leases, and you have them all in spring and summer. It'll be a lot easier to fill them. You'll be able to fill it before they even leave. Like, it'll be great.
Yeah.
So how did you choose? So you're doing rent by the room, correct?
Yeah.
How did you choose that versus just maybe trying to section it off, or doing like maybe trying short-term rental, or anything like that. How did you choose to do the rent by the room model?
So for one, I was kind of comfortable just living with other people because I've been doing that, so I was cool with that. And then just looking at the numbers, if you start to look at, I was running a lot of numbers when we were looking, and it was what I realized quickly was that if you have 5 people by the room, it doesn't really matter what the price is for the most part. It's going to look great.
That's the general rule of thumb.
Yep. 5 and up.
So that kind of sealed it for me. And then I did make a kind of a switch. I was I also added to my criteria. So I was looking for like a high bedroom count, but I added to my criteria that I wanted it also to be a good long-term rental. So using like the Zillow rent estimates, I was finding ones that also looked good, running the numbers like that as a rental. So that I mixed that in as well. Yeah.
So what's your blended rate? Obviously, like you're living in one room. So
Yeah.
you have 5 bedrooms. What's your blended room rate with current and projected? Like your average, rent per room.
The average. So right now I have everyone in at 700, 750, and one person at 750. I haven't rented the master out. That's been kind of a struggle for some reason.
Really?
So you got 3 in there between 7 and 750.
Yeah, 3
Okay.
at 3 at 700, and then 1 at 750.
Okay, and that includes utilities, right? Utilities in your name.
Yes.
So are you? You're paying all utilities plus like Wi-Fi.
Yes.
Okay.
Plus Wi-Fi, and I also
So what's the Wi-Fi costing you?
the Wi-Fi is so I've actually got really good internet. I paid for like top of the line gigabit, so it's like $80 a month.
I think that's probably a smart thing. We have that many people, especially working from home. Like spend the extra $20 and get the big pipe.
Yeah, we've got so far we got 2 people working from home, and I've also decided that to try to mitigate, since we got so many people living in here, to try to mitigate pain points. I'm giving them like laundry detergent and
Like you're just
paper
providing
towel,
that in the common
toilet
area,
paper,
right?
yeah, things like that people share, plates and stuff, which I think is pretty normal.
Yeah, you furnish the common stuff.
But
and then actually another tip, because you have that many people, I don't know how big the fridge is, but I would suggest putting another fridge downstairs just so you don't have 6 people using one fridge, which gets a little crowded. So I would maybe put an extra fridge downstairs just to have, or maybe like a microwave too.
I think that's a good idea.
Yeah, because you'll avoid people just making the kitchen a mess.
Yeah.
What I like is how you said you're focused. You were looking for a long term, because when I started doing it, I was just looking at what it would like. Oh, well, when we're living there, it's going to cash flow. It's going to cash flow. If you look big picture, does it really matter on if you're making $200-300 a month, or if you're paying $700 a month? Because regardless, it's better than renting a loft in downtown. And what really matters is when you move out, how does that work for a rental?
What's the appreciation, Chris, last year
Oh my gosh.
for detached single families?
Oh, it's so absurd right now.
I guess it's a unique time, though. Too.
Yeah, depends on the neighborhood, but close to double digits.
Wow.
And they're projecting. I've read a few projections. For Denver, most areas they're projecting like anywhere from 8 to 12%, because a lot of the other areas are experiencing what Denver is. Besides like New York City and San Francisco and those areas, because so many people are just migrating to these cities like Denver and Austin and even small areas as well.
I think Denver's very big on tech. I think they're number 2 for technology for people.
Wow.
Yeah, it depends on the
Business.
rating, but there's a ton of
number
businesses
3.
moving here.
Yeah. So if you're betting on Denver and betting on Denver long term, I think you're going to win.
That's my bet.
So that's actually an interesting point you bring there, because one of my questions that I had was, what's the worst case scenario for the Denver market? Now, this is kind of a crazy question, but something I've thought about a little bit, and I'm just curious what you guys' thoughts were. But I'll start just to give you an idea, because it's kind of a hard question. So I was thinking about this before I before I bought anything. I was like, what's the worst that could happen?
Which is always a good question to ask.
Yes.
Always a good question to ask. I seriously ask every time, what's the worst case to happen? Okay.
And what can you do to prevent that?
Yeah.
Proactively.
Yeah. Well, this one you can't prevent. My idea.
Okay.
But and maybe it's not that bad. I don't know. But anyways, so my thought was that my worst case was that Denver would turn into like the mountains. It's kind of right on the edge of the Southwest, or it is in the Southwest, but it's kind of neighboring these deserty regions. Was that like with all the fires and stuff that everything would just light up, and then all the Denver forest is burnt, and it's just like a desert wasteland.
And then we're like Mad Max in 5
And
years.
then we're like, oh, we gotta get out of here.
So basically, like Denver become like California is the last 5 or 8 years with their horrible forest fires.
Yeah.
So we kind of saw that this last year. I mean, we all saw those plumes of like that wasn't there yesterday. What is this?
Are those clouds?
In the clouds? Yeah.
Yeah.
So I thought about this because I've lived in California twice in my life, and I've got friends and family with cabins and second homes in the mountain areas. I'm like, I realized years ago I would never buy in that area because I'm like, there's such a high likelihood it's going to burn down.
Yeah.
I don't want to buy in those areas. So I think that's a bigger concern for like if your mountain communities up there, because we saw some crazy fires up there. And they'll probably see what California is seeing now. Like, it's hard to get insurance on all these houses now because insurance companies just aren't insuring them. Luckily, I think we're at least quite a few years behind California, but that's, I think, the trajectory we're going on. But I don't think it'll impact Denver very much. I mean, like...
The mountains will still be there.
Yeah, I mean, they're not all going to burn down at once.
Yeah.
They'll go through sections, even go to, California. And for all the forest fires you see out there, and every other forest fire is, a record size or record growth rate or whatever it is, you still go out there and you can it's just green and mountains everywhere. Or not green all the time, but mountains everywhere. I think that's a very low probability. Now, in 50 years, probably get more exacerbated. But I remember reading one of these reports. This was years ago. It was just a very long-term, just like reports. And they were saying, if you want to buy the next California, where it was 20, 30 years ago, go buy in Portland, Seattle. Because in 50 years, as, everything warms and dries up, they have water and there'll be sunnier skies. So you may want to hedge your bets there. You may want to go start nomading in Portland if you can survive 30 years of gray skies.
I don't know if I can handle that.
So I give the Mad Max scenario very, very low probability.
Glad to hear.
Panel.
I can't argue with that. I don't. That's a good question to ask. But I mean, I think we experienced it fairly bad here over the summer. But I think we all pushed through and we moved forward. I mean, we just adapt.
And I mean, something else I'll add on because I've actually thought a lot about just it's all long-term trends. If you play the long-term trends, like it's. If you just do what everyone's talking about and reading about and like, hey, we can figure this is going to grow here. I'm very like that's definitely, a possibility in the long run with Denver, but I think such a low one. I mean, before Denver becomes a real issue for Denver, California is literally going to burn down.
Yeah.
Florida is going to be underwater. I mean, already Miami and those
problems.
parts. I mean, we're going to see big change in those areas first. And Denver is going to trail behind them for decades, I would think. So, yeah. I'm not worried about that one.
Right.
I wouldn't go buy beachfront Florida right now, but or a mountain, cabin in California.
Where there's only one exit road.
What's your worst case, man?
Oh gosh.
Or I guess let me rephrase it. What was your worst case when you first started house hacking, and what's it now?
That's a good one. Well, it was that. We wouldn't fill it, and we'd be stuck. It wasn't my house is going to burn down. It wasn't we're going to have these tenants have these parties and whatnot. It was just not filling it and being stuck. Presenting this idea to my wife of passive income through real estate investing and renting out part of our house and sharing it with others. It was just not feeling it and not promising what I delivered of being able to cover our rent and save money and just creatively going bankrupt. That's the best way I could put it. But it wasn't the doomsday. It was all on me. It was I've sold this. She believes in me, but now I need to perform. But I mean, that's a great thing about all of us in here is I think we're pretty intelligent people that when something happens and you're unprepared for it, there may not be an answer, but someone out there has gone through it and someone else figured it out, or you can figure it out, you know. But I would say that was my worst case scenario was.
What about you, Jeff?
Not renting.
Yeah. So when I first started, it was more similar to Ben. It was like, oh, well, if I don't fill it, I gotta have this mortgage to pay for by myself. And then assuming I do more than one, it's like 2 mortgages. Now we're talking about, and the average Denver price, called it $2,000 mortgage, 25. That's $5,000 potentially.
Becomes
just
more and more
mortgage.
real money.
Exactly. Then you really feel it.
Yeah.
So, but now, watching a lot of your podcast and when you talk about reserves, I think that's the most important thing is, yes, you're going to have dips, you're going to have vacancies, you're going to have things like natural disasters, you'll have hailstorms, things will break, you'll have issues, but a good way to mitigate that is just be prepared for it, because it's knowing if you have 6 to 12 months of reserves for each property, that will serve you well, and you won't have, then your worst case won't be as big a deal for you. So for example, if like all your tenants just like lost their job, stopped paying rent, let's say you had your place fully occupied, 5 tenants getting 0, how many months could you support that mortgage until you're like really hurting?
Right.
What do you run
50%.
your stress test at?
I do. So I look at it, especially rent by the room is a little different because the reality is most of them won't lose their jobs, all of them at the same time, unless they're all in the same industry or something. So I look at it more. I do a few different scenario analysis, like at 75%.
Just like portfolio
Straightforward. Yeah,
vacancy.
exactly.
Okay.
75%, 50%, and I even gone down. When COVID first started, I did 25%. I was like, well, at least if they could do a quarter,
What
I'll
was
be.
the quarter scenario like? How long?
Oh,
were you
that
good
was
for?
rough. That was it was about 9 months, I think. But luckily, now I just looked at the numbers recently for 2020. It was even with I had a few people work at restaurants, some work hotels, even with renting by the room, and just renting normal units. I collected 95% of all my rents
For 2020?
Yeah.
Oh, I
Yeah.
mean, that's
and I didn't do any payment plans. I just like gave people breaks.
95%. That would be a normal year.
Yeah, so I was happy.
mean-
And if like a handful of them lost their jobs for extended periods of time. So I was like, well, COVID's like the ultimate stress test to me.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
and hopefully we don't go through another one anytime soon once we get past it. But renting by the room, going back to your situation, the great thing about renting by the room, I would say, from worst case is you're not going to have, most of them are going to coming up with $700 is way easier than like I hate to pick on Ben here, but Ben's future tenant, if they lost their job, $2,100, right? Is that what you rented for?
$2,100 for 2 years.
2 years. Okay. $2,100. If it's 2 adults, paying for it, if they both lost their jobs, it's tough coming up with $2,100.
It sure is.
I don't want to scare you, Ben. But
So we should sell
$700.
Allison earmuffs, right?
Don't listen to number 5. Number 4 is great. Don't listen to number 5. We're not even airing it. No.
Yeah, but I'm sure you'll be
Yeah.
fine. But my point being is rented by the room is a great alternative strategy because you mitigate your risk by multiple, 5 tenants, 6 tenants paying your mortgage versus 1 or 2.
Yeah.
So you have 6 incomes. So the chances of all of them, like a lot of them, I have tenants that lost jobs. They did DoorDash. That worked in the restaurants. They couldn't work, so they did DoorDash, and they still paid. They didn't have any hiccups, and they didn't get unemployment, and they still paid for.
They also have a lot less like personal overhead, basically. As
Exactly.
Well. I mean,
Yeah, and they just have a room too, so they don't have these huge expenses as well. Right. So it's coming up with that $700. So even your worst case, if multiple ones lost their jobs, even you got 50%, $350, that will still probably cover your mortgage and then some. So even your worst case is still better than most people's best case for normal rentals.
Oh, that's a really good point.
Yeah. Hate to pick on Ben though.
Well, the big thing is pricing it right. And so when you're running and before you're buying it and looking at numbers, did you look at, okay, here's what the market rent for one room is, but what is, let's say something happens, or like does whatever may happen, on what you could lower your price down to but still be financially stable? Did you ever ever go through, run those numbers? Like, maybe the worst case scenario is you can always fill a room at a certain price, like you said.
Yeah.
Tenant. I won't go there.
There's a price for every tenant in the spectrum.
There's a price point, but you always talk about vacancy, but then you can always fill it. But where's your breaking point of okay, I predict I can get between 700 and 750, but will you still be, if you have let's say just a steady W-2 job, will you be financially stable, good at 550 per room? Is a question I did, and we always just played worst case scenario. I don't know if you did that at all as something I proposed to Allison when we were doing this.
So every time I start something, I always ask my case, what is the absolute worst case scenario? Like when you brought that question a few minutes ago, Andrew, I really like, because that's one of my questions I ask myself all the time, whether it's for investment, a business, anything. I'm like, hey, what's the worst case scenario? Because like, hey, worst case, what can happen? And for the most part, I'm upper 30s now. In my 20s, it was like, all right, I do this. I'm like, okay, worst case scenario. Okay, and maybe I want money. Maybe I can't do this, making that. Oh, I'll move back in with my parents. Like, I'm in the fortunate position where I can do that if I need to. But that's always like, hey, worst case scenario, I'm not going to be homeless. I won't be, a vagabond. I won't be doing this. I'll just, hey, worst case scenario, I have to suck up my pride, move back with my parents for 6 to 18 months, and figure out Chris 2.0. And for years, that's like, hey, that is the worst case scenario, which always made me feel relieved, which took off a lot of pressure. And then, Ben, as you have kids, becomes a very different worst case scenario. I can tell you that the switch will flip for you, buddy.
This is good. I'm taking notes.
Drink some more. That will help, man.
All right. Cheers.
But that was always my question. Hey, what is the worst case scenario, and what is the highly probable upside? Because worst case scenario in Denver is like, okay, we could have horrible price drops, horrible vacancy, horrible non-rent payments. Very, very low probability. What's the upside? We continue to see 6 to 12% appreciation for the next couple of years. We see strong rent increase. That is I give that I don't know, 20 to 50 times more likely than us seeing like prices drop. And so I'm like, great, I'll take that risk to reward ratio. I'll take that bet all day long. And that's how I look at it. It's a simple bet. Great, I've got a 50 times upside. Take it all day long. And that's how I always looked at it. Worst case scenario. Now, if worst case now is like, oh my gosh, I can't pay the bills and my children have to figure out something else, it becomes a very different question. But it's always a great question to ask, and then weigh the worst case scenario with the most likely probable scenario. Do you guys disagree that Denver is going to appreciate in prices and rents in the next 5 years?
Yeah, no, it's gonna. I'd be
Come on,
shocked.
I'll take this bet with anyone right now.
I won't bet you because I'm gonna lose.
I'll give you really good odds, Jeff.
What are we talking about here?
I'll give you 10-1.
So 10-1 that Denver. How much do you think per year on average?
I'm not saying that. I think prices and rents will be more in 2025 than they are in 2021.
That's your bet.
That's my bet.
Okay, that's not fair. That's not a good bet at all. That's a terrible bet.
How about inflation adjusted?
That's a little better.
Okay.
Let me think about it.
All right.
By the end of this recording,
We got about 5 minutes. We have to wrap up here, so you got 4.5 minutes
to decide.
So, and Andrew, kind of getting back, what other questions you have for Ben and Jeff here? Like, just whether it's tactical operation questions, big questions, like preparing for number 2, like what's on your mind?
Yeah. So another kind of interesting question that's kind of come up. Essentially, since it's my first house hack, I'm allowed to do this. I've only been really looking for like kind of guys my age, but how do you look at like mixing different types of people in your house when they're living together, sharing spaces? Is that just something that?
Yeah, I mean, I could talk about this a little bit. Because you probably noticed you get a lot of different types of people, right? Yes. Male, female, old, young,
kind
people
of tell
with kids.
Us some maybe won't gel so well together.
Yeah, it's
you never know.
When you're living there, the nice thing when you live in there is you could be a little more picky because
Right.
you could, you could choose who you want to live with. When you move out, that's when it gets a little harder.
Why?
Because technically you have to abide by all the fair housing laws and regulations, and you can't just say, "Oh, I only want to live with guys because I'm comfortable hanging out with guys. I don't want to have any women here to make it awkward." Right. You can't do that anymore. You have to pretty much accept anyone that's, as long as they meet your qualification criteria, when it's like credit score and clean background check and stuff like that, then you have to just take whoever you get.
Right.
I would just set when you have the mix, and I've done a few where it's a lot of people, when you get to the mix, it's just they've done it before, so it's not a total like, oh, I've never lived with all guys before, or I never lived with all women before. They just adapt.
And they know they're going into it.
And actually, what I do sometimes too is just to make things a little easier, I have them sometimes talk to them and just see if they mesh. Sometimes they find out like, well, I felt a little, this doesn't seem like the right fit for me, and they kind of weed themselves out by doing that. So yeah, sometimes not every time, but if they're like kind of curious, like if I have all guys living there and it's a single lady that wants to move in, I would want pretty much for anyone, but especially when it's all one sex and one of the other, I definitely want them to meet.
Right.
Just because they're strangers, right? They don't know each other, and you just got to make sure. And it usually is fine. I've done mix before, and they work itself out. Even shared bathrooms too.
Really? Okay.
It hasn't been an issue.
Cool.
So.
All right.
So why do you have to worry about when you're living? Why do you not have to worry about when you're living there, being picky? I'm losing the terminology. Why can you choose specifically a certain type of people?
Because it's Ben's house, Ben's rules. So you can choose whoever you want.
Isn't there a
Miss Murphy's
there you
exemption?
go. Yeah.
Our favorite. Even though she's made up, she's not a real person.
Yeah.
But yeah, you technically, when you're living there, when you're renting by the room, you could choose if you want everyone 6'2", 200 pounds, ex-Nebraska football player, maybe Virginia Tech too. Then you could do that. If you want all women, you could do like whatever. Like if you want senior citizens, you could do that. It's up to you. But when you move out, then it changes. Then you have to be a true know the rules and regulations of your state and city and county, because Denver actually has more rules than different cities have more rules than just the state and federal regulations. So definitely be aware of that.
Gotcha.
And speaking of some Denver rule changes, at least for Denver County, it looks like their unrelated occupancy limit is going from 2 to 5.
Correct. So February 8th, 2021, they're going to vote on it, and it'll take it from 2 to 5, and that means basically 2 to 5 mix. So if you had related, unrelated, or just all unrelated.
Okay.
And that does not include kids. So you could potentially rent out to a family, I guess, and that'd still be within, because kids are not in the part of the zoning code.
So the December vote it passed the preliminary stage, right? And February is the final one?
Correct.
Okay.
And there's I guess we can put in the show notes, I have like this list. Also, that was provided from City of Denver. I looked it up. They have a list of all the unrelated parties for each city in the Denver metro area.
What do you mean?
So each city has their own
Yeah.
unrelated parties. So like, I think you're in Arvada, right?
Oh, they have a list for every
Denver metro.
Oh, can you send that to me?
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah, we'll definitely put the show notes, because that is
I think Englewood, Denver, and there's one more that has just 2, and the rest of them are 3. Aurora's like 3 or 4, and the rest are like 5. I think our Arvada 6, Westminster's like 5. Yeah, I don't remember all of them, but there's a list, and it was really cool.
I like that.
Yeah.
And that was just part of like the Denver.
Yeah, because they
memorandum?
were talking about, of course, like how we're gonna do in Denver, because we have similar comparable cities nearby. They have 5 unrelated parties. How they came up with that 5 number, which is very useful for future properties for you to know that.
Yeah, absolutely.
So we are butting up here at the hour mark, guys. So we should start wrapping up here. But this was a lot of fun. Thank you guys for being part of like the guinea pigs of the studio.
Yeah,
Hopefully
first one.
Hopefully the booze help subside the issues with having to move stuff around. So thank you guys.
Yes.
But we're gonna do more of these in 2021, get more organized, get better every month, at least do once a month as a plan, hopefully do more in-person live stuff and just grow it. And as COVID, eventually dies down, do bigger events in person as well. So Ben, Andrew, Jeff, thank you guys so much for coming out today.
Thank you,
Thank
Chris.
you.
Thank you.
It was fun.
Yeah.
Thanks for coming out, Andrew.
Thanks,
Appreciate
Andrew.
it.
Thanks for having me on.